I tell myself this is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition with a calendar attached to it. I spent 36 years drawing lines on paper, putting numbers next to them, then watching real life follow those numbers when nobody wanted to believe them. Bridges do not fail all at once. Towns do not fail all at once. Systems fail in steps, with pauses between, with denial in the gaps. I learned to treat those gaps as danger. 3 days before the outbreak goes public, I stand in the abandoned barn with my truck backed in far enough that the taillights do not shine through the missing boards. The air smells of old hay and mouse droppings, and there is a thin layer of dust on everything that I never fully beat back. I did not buy this place to farm. I bought it to hide a hole in the ground that the county forgot. The barn sits on the far side of a neglected property line in rural Pennsylvania, outside the little town where I am retired, in the way retired men get described when they still wake up early and still keep a notebook in their shirt pocket. The deed is in a holding name, paid clean. I keep the grass cut only enough to avoid complaints. I keep the mailbox empty. I wave at nobody. Under a warped section of stall flooring, under a false beam that looks rotten on purpose, there is a hatch you would not notice unless you knew the measurements. You would not trip on it either. I made sure of that. The plywood is scuffed, the nails are mismatched, and there is a stain that suggests years of water damage. It is theater built from real materials. I drop to one knee and pry up the first corner with a flat bar. The board lifts without a squeal because I rubbed candle wax into the contact edges weeks ago. The latch beneath is cold steel with a dull finish. I touch it once, then stop, because the part of my mind that never learned to relax starts listing the last checks again. Air, water, seal, comms, waste, power, exit. The bunker is a personal Cold War shelter that some careful person built for himself and then abandoned without tearing it out. A farmer, maybe. A local contractor with friends in the right offices. It has the simple shape of a poured concrete box with a short entry tunnel. It is not deep enough to be a missile silo. It is deep enough to be invisible to casual digging. The best kind of hiding is boring. I restored it in secret over 2 years, slowly, with trips that looked like weekend errands. Lumber in small quantities. Bags of cement in the back with a tarp. A hand truck. A few rolls of wire. Nothing that made a clerk notice a pattern. I paid in cash where it mattered. I avoided contractors. I avoided friends. I open the hatch and set it aside, then lift the inner steel lid with both hands. The hinge takes the weight without a groan. The air that rises from below smells dry, with a faint metal note and the stale hint of stored paper. That smell calms me more than it should. It smells controlled. I climb down the ladder, boots on rungs, flashlight pinned under my chin. The light throws hard shadows against the concrete walls. The first landing is narrow. I twist, step down again, and the ceiling drops close enough that I keep my head angled. Inside, the bunker is lit by a single battery lantern that I left hanging from a hook, ready. I turn it on. The LED throws a white cone. The room comes into shape, a narrow cot, shelves with labeled bins, 2 water drums strapped in place, a hand pump mounted to a duct box, a crank generator bolted to a workbench, a small radio station on the shelf with spare parts tucked beside it. There is a toilet set up behind a privacy curtain that I never look at longer than necessary. I set my duffel down and take my time shutting the inner door. It is a thick steel plate with a gasket that still has bite. The locking dogs rotate with a steady mechanical resistance, the kind that comes from careful machining and heavy grease. I listen for the last click. I feel for the final stop. I do not trust my eyes. I trust contact points. The rifle stays in its case on the top shelf, exactly where I can reach it without crossing the room. One rifle. Not an arsenal. I never wanted a war down here. I wanted distance from people who turn into a mob when the grocery shelves go thin. I sit on the cot, open my notebook, and write the date at the top of a fresh page. I write the time from my wristwatch. I write the reason in plain words, because a man can lie to himself in subtle ways when he has too much quiet. Sealed early, I write. Panic kills faster than infection. I am not guessing. I saw the early footage 3 weeks ago, passed around private channels from a friend of a friend who still talks to people in Harrisburg. It showed a man in a hospital hallway with his wrists bound to a bed rail, vomiting dark fluid, then going still. A nurse leaned in. Then the man did not stay still. The clip ended fast. No context, no official statement, just the kind of cut that tells you the person holding the phone turned and ran. That was when I stopped planning and started moving through my checklist every day, finding weak points, fixing them, then finding the next weak point. Nobody understands that mindset until a bridge load rating keeps an entire county from driving over water during a flood. Limits keep people alive, and people hate limits until limits are all that is left. Up above, I can still hear the world if I listen carefully. The bunker has a passive vent line that snakes out through the barn wall and exits under a mess of old boards. The sound path is not direct, but vibrations travel through material anyway. A truck on the road, a distant dog, wind pushing a loose sheet of tin. It all arrives in small signals. I spend the first hour doing nothing but listening and checking the airflow. I pump the manual handle 40 strokes, then watch the pressure gauge settle. I check the filter housing. I check the seals around the vent box. I make myself slow down so I do not miss the obvious. The bunker is only as safe as the one detail I get lazy about. When I turn on the radio, the first voice I catch is cheerful in a forced way, with the rhythm of a person reading prepared lines. It is a state public health bulletin about a localized incident and no cause for alarm and avoid misinformation. The words come through with a hint of static. The signal has that strained sound that happens when too many people are trying to talk at once. I keep the radio low. I do not want to waste power, and I do not want to lose my head to the constant churn of talk. I listen in short blocks. I write key points. I stop. I do maintenance. I eat. I drink. I do not let the outside narrative become my inside schedule. The first night, I sleep in segments, waking up every time a sound changes. I do not call it fear. I call it monitoring. I built my life around monitoring. My hands know what to do when my mind tries to imagine worst cases. Day 1 underground, the public announcement hits. It is noon, based on my watch. The voice on the radio drops the careful phrasing and uses the word outbreak. Not zombie, not undead. Outbreak. He tells people to stay home, to avoid crowds, to expect disruptions. He tells people help is coordinated. He says the National Guard is supporting. That same hour, I hear sirens above, more than usual, moving toward town, then away, then toward again. The pattern repeats until it turns into a steady background. I pump air twice that day because my mind wants tasks. I clean the counter that is already clean. I line up my canned food by type even though it is already labeled. I eat a small meal and force myself to drink water on a schedule. Dehydration makes the mind slippery. I know the tricks. I worked enough emergency projects to see men make bad calls because their bodies ran low on basics. On the radio, a local station takes calls. The host tries to keep his voice steady. A woman says her husband is locked in the bathroom and the door shakes when he hits it. She says he will not answer her. The host tells her to leave the house if she can. She says there are people outside screaming and running. She asks if the police are coming. The host does not answer that part. I turn the radio off after that. I do not need more pictures in my head. I need data. I need trends. I need the time it takes for voices to change from help is on the way to help is not coming. Day 2, I hear a helicopter pass over once, low enough that the sound pushes through the ground into the bunker walls. It fades, then comes back, then fades again. I cannot tell direction. I keep my palm flat against the concrete, feeling for the vibration shift. It does not give me much. Concrete eats detail. I spend that afternoon checking the emergency escape route. It is a secondary shaft disguised as a collapsed corner of the barn foundation, blocked by a heavy panel from the inside. It is meant for the day the main hatch becomes impossible. I pull the inner cover, check for moisture, check the handholds. I put everything back and reseal it with the same careful pressure. That night, the power grid above fails. I do not see it, obviously. I hear it. The distant hum that exists when civilization is running, even in rural areas, drops away. People forget that electricity has a sound until it vanishes. The bunker feels the change in the way a room feels when a refrigerator shuts off in the next house. The background becomes thinner. For another day, the radio still works. Some stations stay up on generators. The voices get more tired. A county official says the hospitals are full. He says the emergency rooms are triaging in parking lots. He says the infected can become violent. He tells people to avoid contact, to barricade, to call a hotline that nobody answers anymore. I hear gunfire above on the third day after the public announcement. Not a single shot. A messy string, then a pause, then another messy string. I do not count rounds. I count the time between bursts. People who shoot in fear do not have discipline. People who shoot with discipline have a reason. Neither option makes me want to open a hatch. I keep my hands busy. I pump air in the morning and evening. I crank power for 30 minutes to top off batteries. The crank generator is bolted down solid, and the handle has a worn grip that I wrapped in tape to keep from blistering my palm. I keep a rag nearby to wipe sweat from the handle, not from my face. I do not let anything slip. Slips become habits. By day 6 underground, I notice something that makes me stop mid-motion. The barn wind chime that the previous owner hung on the porch beam used to ring when the wind came from the west. It was a soft sound, thin metal. It was annoying, which made it useful. It told me the world above still had weather. Now I do not hear it anymore. That could mean a dozen things. The chime could have fallen. The wind could have shifted. A board could have broken and pinned it. The sound path could be blocked. I do not make a story from one missing noise. I write it down anyway. 2 days later, I realize I have not heard a single dog bark in 48 hours. There are dogs in every direction around this property. People keep dogs because it is rural Pennsylvania, and that is what people do. Dogs bark at deer, at cars, at each other. Dogs bark because dogs exist. I pull the stool under the vent box and put my ear close to the metal housing. I do not touch it with my cheek. Skin absorbs sound. Bone transmits it. I press the side of my head near enough to feel the vibration through the air gap. I hold still and listen until my mind stops inventing noises. Nothing. The silence above is not perfect. Wind still moves over the roof. The barn still shifts. The ground still ticks with small stresses. But the human layer is missing. No engines. No distant voices. No metal banging. No farm equipment. No doors. No life that I can interpret. I increase my listening schedule. Every morning after pumping air, I spend 10 minutes at the vent box. Every evening before sleep, I spend 10 minutes again. I write notes with dates and times, trying to turn my unease into a chart. I am an engineer. I believe in charts even when the chart does not help. Around day 14, the last local station drops off. The radio becomes a scan of static and distant weak signals. I catch fragments from farther away, voices with different accents, snippets of emergency bulletins repeating on loops. I catch a federal tone once, clipped and formal, ordering evacuation from designated zones. He lists counties. I hear mine. I sit very still with the radio in my hand, then set it down gently. Evacuation orders can mean rescue. Evacuation orders can mean abandonment. The details matter. The list of counties matters. The direction of movement matters. None of that comes through in the fragments. In the following days, my mind keeps circling one thought that I do not want to say out loud, even to myself. What if everyone left? What if the silence is not death? What if the silence is absence? If everyone left, it means roads cleared in one direction. It means fuel got used for escape. It means a rumor became a river, and people followed it until the ones behind could not catch up. It means the infected stayed behind, wandering empty towns with nobody left to feed the chaos. If everyone left, it also means nobody is coming back for a retired civil engineer with a secret bunker under an abandoned barn. I did not register myself anywhere. I did not tell my son. I did not tell my sister. I told nobody, because secrecy was the whole point. I cannot blame a rescue team for not finding a man who hid on purpose. By week 4, the bunker begins teaching me lessons I did not want. Mold does not care about plans. On the back wall behind the shelves, I notice a faint bloom of gray that was not there before. It is small, but it is real. I pull everything away from that wall and find a hairline crack in the concrete that I somehow missed in my inspections. Moisture is wicking through from the soil. I do not panic. I do not sit down and stare. I get my patch kit, hydraulic cement, brush, rag. I clean the area, dry it with a small heat pad powered from the battery, then pack the crack. The cement sets fast. My hands move with familiar confidence. For a while, the problem feels ordinary. Ordinary problems are a relief. The next day, the patched line holds, but the damp smell remains. I adjust the airflow. I change the filter pad for the first stage and mark the date. I wipe every surface with diluted bleach solution, careful not to waste too much. I hang my clothes on hooks so nothing rests against the walls. The routine expands. I clean more. I ventilate more. I pump more. I crank power longer to run the small fan. I begin to understand the real cost of manual systems. They demand attention every day. They do not forgive mood swings. They do not care that time drags. I start talking out loud sometimes, not because I want company, but because it keeps my thoughts from spinning in silence. I speak in plain sentences. Filter changed. Water drum checked. Crank 20 minutes. I keep it boring on purpose. On day 42, I hear a sound above that almost makes me stand up too fast. A single heavy thud, then another, then a scraping drag. It is not a voice. It is not an engine. It is something moving weight across wood or dirt. I kill the lantern and sit in the dark with the radio off. Darkness makes sense to my brain. It removes variables. I bring the flashlight up only when I need it, keeping the beam low, pointed at my knees. The thuds continue for 2 minutes, then stop. I do not hear a truck. I do not hear a door. I hear nothing for a long time after. I write it down. Movement above. Unknown source. That night, I check the inner door seals twice. I check my escape shaft. I put the rifle case on the cot beside me, not opened, but within reach. I sleep in short blocks again. Day 50, the air pump handle begins to squeak. That should not happen. I pull the assembly apart and find the grease has thinned. Heat and time do that. I repack it and run a test. The gauge climbs, the squeak stops. Another ordinary problem solved. Day 56, the crank generator chain slips once, a sharp metal click that echoes in the small room. I stop immediately. I do not force it. Forcing breaks things. I open the side panel and see the tensioner bolt has walked a quarter turn loose. Vibration plus repetition. I tighten it, add a lock washer, and mark the fix. I tell myself this is what the bunker was meant for. A man alone keeping a machine alive. Day 63. I get my first real hint that the silence outside is not just evacuation. The vent intake begins pulling in a faint smell that does not belong in clean rural air. It is a chemical edge, then a burned note. Not smoke from a fireplace, not brush burning, more processed than that. I shut the intake down to minimum and switch to the internal recirculation mode with the scrubber. The bunker was built with a crude chemical scrubber box, nothing fancy, replaceable media. It buys time. It does not buy forever. I check my spare media inventory and feel my brain start doing math without permission. The smell fades after 2 hours, then returns the next day for 30 minutes. I write it down. Air contamination events, short duration. If there is burning outside, it can mean chaos. It can mean controlled burns. It can mean someone is trying to clear infected bodies from roads without heavy equipment. It can mean a farmhouse caught and nobody put it out. All options are bad for different reasons. By month 3, time becomes less sharp. I keep track anyway. I draw a calendar grid in the notebook and X off every day. I give myself small projects. I reorganize storage. I repair a loose shelf bracket. I read through old maintenance manuals that I brought down for reference. I do not reread novels. Stories pull me out of the present. I need the present to stay firm. Month 3 also brings the worst change. The water drum straps loosen slightly, and when I check the floor, I find dampness along a seam that runs under the drum rack. It is not a leak from my own water. It is groundwater. It is rising. I get down on hands and knees with the flashlight and trace the damp line. It leads to the corner near the entry tunnel. The concrete there feels colder. The patch I did earlier on the back wall is still holding, but the moisture is finding new paths. The soil above is shifting its pressure with seasons. The bunker is feeling the weight of spring melt. I start bailing into a separate container, then pump the waste out through a sealed line that drains into a rock pit farther from the structure. I built that line for emergencies, never expecting to use it this much. I do not let the water pool. Water becomes mold. Mold becomes a health problem. Health problems become decisions I do not want to make. I increase ventilation again, then stop when the chemical smell returns. I am trapped between 2 bad choices: fresh air that might carry smoke or chemicals, or stale air that I can scrub only for so long. I choose a third option. I vent in short bursts during the clean windows and recirculate during the bad windows. It becomes a job. Monitor smell, monitor gauge, vent 30 seconds, seal, scrub, record, repeat. I keep my hands moving because stopping makes the mind wander toward things I cannot verify. In the middle of month 4, I hear something that sounds wrong for empty countryside. A mechanical whine overhead, high and steady, passing in a straight line. Not a helicopter. Too thin, too consistent. It lasts maybe 15 seconds. A drone. That is the word that appears in my mind. I do not know if it is law enforcement, military, hobby, or scavenger. I only know it exists. That means someone still has batteries charged and equipment intact. That means the world did not simply go dark. It changed shape. That same night, the chemical smell gets stronger than before and it stays longer. I switch to full recirculation and begin using scrubber media in a way that hurts my inventory. My hands keep moving, swapping packs, sealing bags, labeling dates. I picture the counties on the evacuation list again. I picture a line drawn around my area. I picture someone deciding it was easier to poison the air than to fight infected house by house. Month 5 begins with banging above. Not random thuds, not dragging, controlled impacts, spaced out. Then the sound of something metal hitting stone. Then silence. Then the impacts again. It goes on for an hour. I do not move fast. Fast makes noise. I turn off the lantern, crawl to the vent box, and listen. The impacts vibrate through the duct for a moment each time, then fade. Whoever is up there is close. Close enough that the barn floor might be taking the blows. The engineer part of me starts building a map from sound. I picture where the hatch is. I picture the support beam. I picture the false floor. If someone steps wrong, the hatch might shift. If the hatch shifts, the pattern of boards will look wrong. If it looks wrong, someone will pry. I keep my breathing controlled, without thinking about breathing at all. I keep my movements small. I slide the rifle case off the shelf and open it with careful quiet. I check the chamber the way I always do, slow, deliberate, then close it again. I do not want a shot down here. A shot would be a permanent change. I move to the inner door and place my palm against it. The steel is still. The banging continues above. After an hour, it stops. I wait 2 more hours anyway. Waiting is free. Mistakes are expensive. When I finally turn the lantern back on, the light makes the bunker look smaller than it did yesterday. That happens when a man realizes someone can reach him. The next day, the banging returns, closer, harder, and the rhythm changes. It has pauses that suggest someone is resting, then continuing. Digging. That is the simplest answer. I write it down, then stare at the words until they look strange. Digging. The word belongs in a normal life. Garden, fence posts, drain line. Not this. I consider my options in the most boring way possible because boredom keeps the mind honest. Stay sealed, stay silent, risk discovery, or communicate. Communication risks giving away the exact location, but it also risks preventing someone from prying blindly and damaging the hatch. I built one small feature for this exact problem, a dead drop tube. It is a narrow metal pipe that runs from a hidden outlet under a pile of broken barn bricks down to a capped opening inside the entry tunnel. I designed it so I could pass a note or small item without opening the main hatch. It is not a speaking tube. It is a one-way exchange. I crawl into the entry tunnel and remove the inner cap. The tunnel smells slightly damper than the main room. I shine the flashlight up the pipe. The pipe curves and disappears. I cannot see daylight. Good. That means the outlet cap up top is still in place. I take a sheet of paper and write in thick block letters. This is a shelter. Do not pry. If you are safe, tap 3 times on metal. If you are infected or chased, leave. I read it twice, then fold it and slide it into the pipe with a small weighted pouch. I push it upward with a dowel until it catches the curve and disappears. Then I recap the inner opening and crawl backward out of the tunnel, careful not to scuff the floor. I wait. The banging starts again above, then stops abruptly. There is a long period of nothing. My mind tries to invent footsteps. I refuse to trust it. I keep my eyes on the pressure gauge and force myself to pump air, because routine keeps me from spiraling. An hour later, metal rings through the duct. 3 taps, slow and deliberate, spaced enough that a person meant it to be understood. I do not answer right away. I wait another hour. Then I tap 3 times from the inside on the pipe cap, using a wrench, keeping the impacts light. I do it once. Then I stop. No extra. No panic code. No complicated system. Simple survives. I go back to the entry tunnel and uncap the pipe again. A faint scraping comes from inside the pipe. Then a small object drops and hits the cap area with a dull clink. I hold still, then reach up and pull it down. It is a note wrapped in plastic and taped tight. I unwrap it carefully. My name is Rachel Klein. I am not infected. I am alone. I heard hollow sound under this barn. I need shelter. I have food and ammo. I will not force. Please answer. I sit there on the tunnel floor with the note in my hand, letting the words land. A name, a full name, a choice to identify herself. That is either honest desperation or a smart lie. Rachel Klein. The name stirs something. Not a close neighbor, not family. Someone local, though. I try to picture the people from the nearest town. A woman at the hardware store, a postal clerk, a nurse. None of the faces settle. I write back, keeping my handwriting large. Noah Briggs, retired engineer. I have been sealed for months. Area above has had chemical smell and long silence. Are there infected outside now? Why are you here? I send the note up. While I wait, the bunker decides to add pressure. The damp seam at the entry corner worsens within 2 days. Water begins to bead in a line along the floor, slow but persistent. My bale container fills faster than before. It is not catastrophic yet, but it is trending the wrong way. Trends matter. If I stay sealed another month, I may lose the fight against moisture. If I open to a person who turns out to be dangerous, I may lose in a different way. I am choosing between 2 kinds of risk, and neither one respects my pride. Rachel answers the next afternoon. Infected still around, not many here. Most people evacuated south, then it fell apart. Military did burns and sprays. Some towns empty, some roads blocked. I have been moving farm to farm. I saw drones. I heard this barn had old storm cellar. I am tired. I am not here to hurt you. Burns and sprays. That matches my air problem. Not a house fire then. Policy. I write back one more question, the one that matters most. How many people with you? Her answer comes fast. Maybe she was waiting near the pipe. 1. Me. I sit on the cot and stare at my hands. The bunker is not a fantasy cabin. It is a box with a finite ceiling. 2 people down here is possible, barely, if rationed. 2 people down here is also a new set of human problems. I did not build this place to become a leader. I built it to disappear. The banging stops for 2 days after our notes, which tells me she is honoring her promise not to force. That detail matters. People who plan violence do not usually show patience when they think something valuable is under their feet. Patience can be a mask, but it can also be character. On the 3rd day, I hear a different sound above. A short burst of frantic footsteps, then a sharp impact against barnwood, then a dragging scrape, then silence. The pattern makes my spine go rigid without me naming it. Something chased her, or she dragged something away from the barn. I go to the vent box and listen. A wet cough rises from above, then a low groan that does not sound like a sick person trying to speak. It sounds mechanical in the wrong way, throat noise without language. I do not need a label. I know what that means. I turn off the lantern again and sit with the rifle across my knees, muzzle down, finger away from the trigger guard. I do not aim at the door because shooting the door solves nothing. I listen instead. The groan fades, then returns, then fades again. Hours pass. The noises drift away. Whatever was up there moved on. Rachel does not send a note that night. I do not blame her. The next morning, my water seam worsens again. A small puddle forms near the entry tunnel. My patch kit is already open. My supplies already thinning. I can keep fighting water, but the bunker is telling me the truth. The structure was not designed to be ignored for years without outside drainage maintenance. Whoever built it counted on living above it, not abandoning the land. I make a decision that feels close to betrayal, not betrayal of logic, betrayal of the version of myself who believed he could outthink the world by closing a door. I send Rachel a final note. I will open main hatch once. Strict rules, no shouting, no fast moves. If you hear infected nearby, you leave. If you bring anyone else, I seal forever. Wait 1 hour after this note, then knock 3 times on wood, then step back. I do not add kindness. Kindness can come later, if later exists. For the next hour, I prepare. I move supplies away from the entry area. I set a lantern at low power near the ladder. I place a small first aid kit where it can be seen. I lock the rifle case again and keep the rifle out, but held low. I check the inner door dogs twice. I check the escape shaft cover and make sure it opens clean. I do not want surprises. I climb the ladder to the inner hatch and stop with my head just below the steel lid, listening. No banging, no groans, no footfalls. Just the barn shifting in wind. 3 knocks come through the wood above, spaced and careful. Then nothing. I rotate the locking dogs, slow, so the metal does not ring. The steel lid lifts. Cooler air drops down, carrying the smell of damp hay and old wood. It also carries a thin ash note that lingers in the background, faint but real. I raise the hatchboard cover and push it aside, careful not to scrape. Light spills through gaps in the barn slats. It is daytime up there, gray light filtered through weathered boards. I climb out 1 rung at a time, rifle slung behind my shoulder with the muzzle down. When my boots hit the barn floor, the world feels too open. The barn seems larger than it used to. Dust floats in the light. The air is cold enough to sting the inside of my nose. That means it is late fall or winter. My calendar says the same. Rachel stands 15 feet away, near the open barn door, where she can run if she needs to. She is in her 30s, maybe early 40s, bundled in a dirty jacket with a hood down, hair tied back tight. Her face looks tired in a practical way, not dramatic, just the tiredness of too many days with no real sleep. A small backpack sits on the ground beside her. A rifle is in her hands, but pointed at the floor, not at me. She speaks first, quiet. Noah. I do not respond with a greeting. I scan around her, around the barn door, around the corners, looking for movement that does not belong. You alone, I say. My voice comes out rougher than I expected. Yes, she answers. I kept your rule. I nod once and gesture toward the hatch. You go down first, I tell her. Slow. Keep your hands visible. She does not argue. She sets her rifle on the ground, steps to it, then turns and lowers herself onto the ladder. Her boots scrape once. She freezes at the sound, then continues. I follow, keeping distance. When we reach the bunker floor, I close the hatch above, not sealing it yet, just setting it in place to reduce sound. Rachel stands still in the center of the bunker room and looks around without touching anything. That restraint matters. People who start grabbing are people who think everything is already theirs. It is clean, she says quietly. It is work, I answer. You hurt. She hesitates, then rolls up her sleeve enough to show a bandage wrap on her forearm. Old, stained. Scrape, she says. Fence wire, not a bite. I do not walk over to inspect. I slide the first aid kit toward her with my foot. Rewrap, I say. Use my supplies. You tell me what you take. She nods, opens the kit, and takes out gauze and tape with careful economy. She works without dramatics. Her hands are steady. While she rewraps, I point at the vent box. Air rules, I tell her. If you smell chemicals, you tell me. If you smell smoke, you tell me. If you cough, you tell me. I will not run this place on guessing. I understand, she says. I move to the hatch and seal it fully, rotating the locking dogs until the gasket compresses. The last turn takes effort. That effort comforts me more than it should. The first day with another person down here is a set of small negotiations without words. Space, noise, light, water use. I keep it structured. I assign her a shelf section and show her where to store her supplies. She opens her backpack and lays out items one by one for me to see. Canned food, a small bag of rice, water purification tablets, ammunition in a box, a compact flashlight, a small folding saw, a lighter, a stack of protein bars crushed at the corners. Where did you come from? I ask, keeping my voice level. Dauphin County, she answers. Worked security at a nursing home. When it started, the police stopped coming. Families stopped coming. We locked doors until the doors did not matter. She stops herself from going deeper. I can tell she has details she does not want to speak in a small room. I respect that. I do not need a full story. I need information that keeps us alive. What is outside? I ask. Empty, she says. Empty roads, empty houses, some infected, not huge crowds here. The crowds went south early, chasing rumors. Later, the military blocked highways. Then the fighting started on the bigger routes. Out here it turned quiet. Quiet can still get you killed. That matches the silence I heard. Evacuation plus collapse of routes, a hollowed region. Rachel tells me about the drones without trying to sound important. They fly over every week or two, sometimes lower, sometimes at night with a faint light. I hid under porches. I hid under tree cover. I do not know what they look for. I do not answer that, because my mind is already building a worst-case map. Surveillance, containment zones, burn lines, chemical treatment. A government deciding a rural region is expendable. That is not science fiction. That is logistics under pressure. The second catastrophe arrives 2 days later, from below. The groundwater seam turns into a steady seep that I cannot keep up with using the bale container alone. The floor stays damp near the entry corner. Mold begins to return at the back wall, faint but stubborn. Rachel does not complain. She grabs the rag and helps mop without being asked, then watches my hands while I set a new patch. This place is sinking, she says, not dramatic, just factual. It is not sinking, I answer. It is leaking. Leak becomes sinking, she replies. She is right in the long run. In the short run, I hate that she is right. We shift into a new plan. Temporary shelter, not permanent. That changes everything. Food becomes fuel for movement. We begin packing what matters into portable containers. Tools, first aid, radio, filters, water purification, spare batteries, maps. The notebook, always. I did not keep a vehicle inside the bunker, because exhaust and fuel storage down here is stupid. And I did not build stupid systems. The truck is still above, hidden under a tarp in the barn. If the tires still hold and the gas has not gone bad, it becomes our way out. If not, we walk. The next week becomes constant activity. We do not sit and talk about our feelings. We work. We test the crank generator longer to charge every battery we own. We rotate vent bursts to keep air workable without burning through scrubber media too fast. We dry the floor whenever we can. We seal food in smaller packs to avoid waste. During one of our vent windows, Rachel freezes with her hand near the intake lever. Her eyes go to the vent box, not to me. "Listen," she whispers. I press my ear close and hear it. A faint ticking sound, steady, coming from above, then moving away. Footsteps, careful, on barn boards. I gesture for her to kill the lantern. She does. Darkness drops fast, thick and familiar. We stand still, not touching each other, just sharing space and listening. A soft scrape comes from above, near the hatch area. Then a pause. Then another scrape. Someone is testing boards. Someone is looking. Rachel's hand moves toward her rifle, slow. I hold my palm out, stopping her. A gunshot in a bunker is not defense. It is noise that announces a target. The scraping continues, then stops. A minute passes. 2 minutes. Then the footsteps move away again, slower than before. I keep us in darkness for another hour. I do not care about comfort. I care about not dying because someone got curious. When we finally speak again, it is in short sentences. "Scavenger," Rachel says. "Maybe heard me digging earlier." "Or drone patrol drew attention," I answer. "Either way," she says, "we cannot stay." I do not argue. That night, I open the emergency escape shaft from the inside for the first time since sealing months ago. The inner panel swings with resistance, then gives. Cool air seeps in. I shine the flashlight up. The shaft is narrow, angled, ending at a camouflaged slab that blends with the barn foundation rubble pile outside. If someone finds the main hatch, we can still leave through this route, but it will be slow. Slow might be fatal. So we make a more aggressive plan, the kind I avoided for months. We will leave during a window of daylight, with supplies packed, and we will not return. Morning comes in a way I only know by watch. We eat a small breakfast and drink water with the kind of discipline people adopt in disaster zones. I pack the notebook and pencils. Rachel packs the first aid kit and her food. We split water tablets. I carry tools. She carries more weight because she is built for it, and she does not make comments about it. At the main hatch, I stop and listen for 10 minutes. Nothing. No footsteps, no scraping, no distant engines. Just the slow creak of wood in wind. I open the hatchboard cover first, then the steel lid. Light leaks down. Dust floats. The barn smells colder than before, and the air has that stale winter feel, dry but sharp. We climb out together, not rushed, not casual. Rachel takes the door side first, scanning. I scan the opposite corners. I do not call out. I do not make noise. The barn looks the same in structure, but wrong in detail. More boards are missing. The far wall has a new hole where something punched through. Animal? Storm? Someone desperate? I cannot tell. The tarp over my truck is still there, but it has sagged with pooled water and leaves. We move to the truck. I peel the tarp back slowly. The paint looks dull. Dust coats the windshield. The tires look low but not flat. I open the driver door and breathe in old cloth and mouse scent. The keys are hidden where I left them. My hands shake slightly while I turn the ignition, and I hate that detail because it feels like losing control. The engine coughs once, then turns over. It runs rough for a moment, then steadies. The sound in the barn feels too loud. I want it quiet again. Quiet is safety. Sound is attention. Rachel loads our packs into the back seat and climbs in. I back the truck out of the barn at a crawl, tires crunching on old gravel. The road beyond the property is empty. No cars, no mailboxes with flags up, no people standing in yards. The world has been stripped down to structures and wind. We drive without talking much. My eyes track every side road, every ditch, every tree line. Rachel watches the rear and sides. She points once, silent, toward a farmhouse with its front door hanging open, swinging slightly. There is no smoke, no light, no movement. It is not a scene from a movie. It is a building that nobody maintains. A mile down the road, we pass a line of burned brush along a field edge. The burn is too straight. It looks planned. The soil is black. A faint chemical scent rides the wind for a moment, then disappears. My throat feels dry, and I take that as a sign to keep my mouth shut and keep driving. At the first intersection near the main county road, we stop behind a line of abandoned vehicles. Not a crash pile, a barrier. Someone parked them there to block passage. The cars are empty, windows broken on some. A minivan sits with a child seat visible through the rear glass. No people nearby, no signs, just the blunt message. Nobody goes through here. Rachel gestures to the shoulder. Back roads, she says, quiet. I turn the truck around in the field edge, careful not to sink, and take the narrower road that cuts through woods and small properties. The pavement is cracked. Leaves blanket the edges. The further we go, the more the trees close in. That is good for hiding from drones. It is also good for ambush. We make it 5 miles before the first infected appears. It stumbles out of a ditch and onto the road, moving with that unsteady purpose that does not match a living person. Its clothes hang loose. Its head turns toward the truck sound. It begins to move toward us without hesitation. I do not speed up. Speeding risks losing control on bad pavement. I steer around it with a wide berth, keeping the truck steady. Rachel keeps her rifle down. A shot would echo through woods for miles. 2 more appear within the next mile, drawn by engine noise. One emerges from behind a road sign, fast enough to make me grip the wheel harder. I still do not shoot. I do not want to become a signal flare. Then the real problem shows itself. A group of 5 infected clustered around a downed tree that blocks the road. The tree looks fresh, snapped in a storm. The infected are not feeding. They are standing and shifting, turning their heads with small jerks, reacting to sound. Rachel leans in close, voice low. We cannot push through. I nod and kill the engine 50 yards back, letting the truck roll to a stop without braking hard. Silence returns in a slow wash. The infected still move, but without the engine sound they drift, uncertain. We sit still for 5 minutes, watching through the windshield. Then we get out on the passenger side, using the truck as cover. I open the back seat quietly and pull out a small handsaw and a hatchet. The hatchet is not for fighting. It is for wood. We move into the woods line and circle wide, staying low, stepping carefully on damp leaves to reduce crunch. Rachel points out a shallow ditch that runs parallel to the road. We follow it, using it as a partial screen. The infected remain near the tree, drifting toward the last place they heard the engine. At a point where the ditch meets the road again beyond the tree, we stop. The road is clear for the moment. The infected are behind us, still near the blockage. We walk back to the truck along the tree line, not on the pavement, then re-enter and start the engine only after we are ready to roll fast. I drive up to the tree but stop short again. The infected stir, but they are still far enough that they do not reach us instantly. I reverse and take a narrow farm track that dips off the main road. The track is muddy but passable. The truck bounces. Something in the suspension groans. I keep going. We end up behind a line of properties with old fences and empty sheds. The track connects to another road after half a mile. The detour costs time and fuel, but it keeps us alive without firing a shot. By late afternoon, we reach a small state game land area with a parking lot. The lot is empty except for a rusted sedan with its hood up. A signboard stands with peeling notices. I decide to stop, not because I want rest, but because moving at night brings more mistakes. We park the truck under tree cover, far enough off the road that passing eyes would not catch it easily. We carry our supplies into the woods and find a shallow depression that gives us cover from wind. We do not build a fire. We do not talk loudly. We eat cold food and sip water, keeping our bodies steady. Rachel watches the tree line while I check the radio. I manage to catch one signal, faint, a repeating automated message on a loop. It lists relief sites in another state far away, with dates that no longer matter. The loop ends and restarts, indifferent. I turn it off. That night, we take turns sleeping without calling it that. I sit with my back against a tree, rifle across my lap, eyes moving in the dark. I do not imagine monsters. I imagine people who heard the truck and followed. People who watched us park and waited. People who learned to survive by taking from others. Nothing happens during the night. That is not peace. That is luck. The next morning, a thin frost coats the leaves. That confirms the season. I think about the bunker again, filling with water, slowly losing the fight. I feel a sharp regret, then push it aside. Regret is a luxury item. I left because I needed to. That is the end of it. We drive again, choosing roads that cut through woods and farmland, avoiding anything that looks like a main route. More blockages appear, more abandoned vehicles. Once we see a burned-out checkpoint with concrete barriers and the remains of sandbags. No bodies, no equipment. Just a place where men once tried to control movement and then stopped being there. In a small town with a single main street, we roll through at idle speed, engine barely above a murmur. Storefront windows are broken. A pharmacy sign hangs crooked. A church has its doors open, and paper sheets blow across the sidewalk. The infected are present here, scattered, slow, drawn to our sound. We do not stop. We do not honk. We do not run anyone over. We leave. 2 miles outside town, we find what Rachel was hunting for in the first place, a place that can be defended without sealing underground. An old maintenance shed near a water management site, concrete block walls, a metal door that still closes, a fenced perimeter partly intact. Not perfect, better than the open road. We clear it cautiously, checking corners, checking behind shelves, checking the small office. No infected inside. Old papers on a desk. A calendar from the year before still hanging. A stale smell of oil and dust. We spend the next hours turning it into a temporary base. We drag old pallets to block windows from the inside. We wedge the door with a bar. We inventory what is here, a few tools, a coil of wire, a broken generator with missing parts, empty fuel cans. Nothing magical, just material. Rachel sits on the floor and finally lets herself speak one longer sentence. I did not want to die alone in a house, she says. I did not want to turn into someone who steals from corpses every day. I needed one place where the rules are clear. I nod, because I understand that better than I want to admit. The bunker rules were clear. The bunker also trained me to believe isolation solves everything. It does not. Isolation just delays the next decision until the decision becomes harder. Over the next week, we live in constant motion. We scout nearby buildings for supplies during daylight, returning before dusk. We mark paths. We set simple noise alarms using cans and wire, not to stop anyone, just to warn. We fix the broken generator enough to spin, then realize we lack fuel anyway. We shift to batteries and a small solar panel Rachel found in a shed miles back. Infected drift through the area sometimes. Drawn to sound from distant places, we avoid direct contact. If one wanders close to the fence, we wait until it moves on, or we distract it with noise thrown far away. We do not celebrate small victories. We do not pretend we are winning. We are managing. One afternoon, the drone sound returns, closer than before. We both freeze. It passes overhead in a straight line. Through a gap in the roof vent, I catch a brief glimpse of movement against the gray sky. A small shape, fast. No markings visible. No clear purpose visible. It is gone in seconds. After it passes, Rachel looks at me. "You think it saw the truck," she says. "It hears it," I answer. "That is enough." We move the truck deeper under cover that same hour, pushing branches over it, breaking up the shape. We stop using it except for emergencies. We shift to walking, which slows everything down and keeps us quieter. Slow becomes survival again. By the end of the second week at the shed, the chemical smell returns on the wind, stronger, rolling in waves. We shut the door and block vents with cloth filters. We wait it out. The smell lingers for hours, then fades. That confirms the sprays are still happening somewhere. Maybe scheduled, maybe triggered by drone observation, maybe just routine containment from a distant command that still exists. That night, I open my notebook and write the conclusion that I avoided for months. "Sealing early kept me alive," I write. "Sealing forever would have killed me." I do not write it to sound wise. I write it because I need the sentence to exist outside my head. The final decision comes on a cold morning when we find fresh footprints near the fence line. Human footprints, boot tread, sharp edges, 2 sets, recent, based on frost disturbance. We did not make them. Rachel crouches and studies them, then looks toward the trees. Her voice is barely above a whisper. "People." I nod and close my notebook. This is the pattern again. Systems fail, then predators move into the gap. I can hide, I can run, I can fight. Fighting brings noise. Noise brings infected. Noise brings more people. Fighting is rarely just fighting. We pack in silence. Only essentials. Only what we can carry. We leave a few supplies behind on purpose in case someone breaks in later and decides it is enough, then leaves. Sometimes you survive by making your own place less valuable. Before we go, I take one last look at the shed interior. It is not home. It is a pause between dangers. That is what the world has become. We walk out through the back, into thicker woods, keeping low. The truck stays hidden. If the people who left footprints find it, they will take it. If they take it, they will make noise. Noise will follow them, not us. That is a hard thought, but hard thoughts keep you alive. By late afternoon, we reach a ridgeline that overlooks a wide valley of empty fields and scattered houses. Smoke rises faintly in the far distance, thin and steady. Not a wildfire. Something controlled, or something contained. Rachel stops and looks back once toward the direction of my bunker, though she cannot see it from here. "Do you miss it?" she asks. I consider the question, then answer in the most honest way I can. "I miss the certainty," I say. "I do not miss being alone with my own decisions." We keep moving until the sun drops and the air gets colder. We find a low spot between trees where wind is weaker. We do not light a fire. We eat quietly. I write one more entry, because if someone ever finds this notebook, I want the logic to be visible. "I built a hidden bunker," I write. "It worked. It also lied to me. It told me the world ends at a door. The world does not end. The world changes shape. If I want to survive longer than my supplies, I have to move with the shape." Rachel takes first watch without being asked. I sit with my back to a tree and keep my hands near the notebook, not the rifle. The rifle is a tool. The notebook is how I keep myself from turning into something narrow and careless. In the dark, far away, I hear a single faint engine sound, then nothing. It could be a generator. It could be a vehicle. It could be a memory trick. I do not chase it. Chasing sounds is how people get pulled into ambushes and infected crowds. I close my eyes for short intervals, trusting Rachel's quiet presence to cover the minutes I cannot control. I do not call it trust in a sentimental way. I call it a partnership based on rules, observation, and shared consequences. When morning comes, we move again. Not toward a promised safe zone, because promises died early. We move toward terrain that reduces risk, water sources we can treat, tree cover that hides from drones, buildings that can be defended temporarily, routes that avoid choke points where desperate people gather. I do not know if my bunker survives the next spring flood. I do not know if someone pries it open and finds empty shelves and damp concrete. I do not know if the county becomes a permanent burn zone. Those unknowns sit behind me now, locked away with the version of myself who believed he could solve collapse by sealing a door 3 days early. What I know is this: the logic that kept me alive did not fail. It just reached its limit. Survival is not a single decision. It is a chain of decisions, and every link changes shape when the world changes shape. I keep walking, and I keep writing, because if the world ever steadies again, someone will want to know what it took to stay human while everything else fell apart.